At the dinner table, I heard the toast before anyone looked at me, and I already knew it was about me. No one stopped talking when the laughter started, and I just sat there watching faces I trusted turn away, like I wasn't even in the room. It was supposed to be a family gathering, but it felt like I had walked into a verdict I wasn't ready for. My mother didn't look up. My father raised his glass, and someone across the table said my name like it was a warning while I stayed completely silent, pretending I wasn't. I used to think loyalty meant showing up before anyone asked. In my family, that rule was never spoken, but it was understood. If something broke, I fixed it. If money was missing, I replaced it. If tension rose, I stayed, quiet until it passed. My father called it being dependable. My mother called it being practical. My sister called it being useful when she needed something. The first time I noticed the pattern, I was 28. My sister had just opened her restaurant, and the bank refused her loan. She called me crying, not asking directly, just circling the problem until I filled in the gap myself. I wired her $50,000 that same week, no contract, no repayment plan, just a promise that she would sort it out later. Later never came. After that, it became normal. My father's medical bills arrived on my kitchen counter like they belonged there. My mother would slide them across the table during coffee, never asking, just waiting for my reaction. I paid them. Not because I was rich, but because silence in that room always felt heavier than the number on the paper. What I didn't realize then was how quickly help becomes expectation. They stopped asking if I could. They started assuming I would even. When I moved out and bought my own house, nothing changed. In fact, it got worse. My address became the backup plan for everything they couldn't manage. Notices, debts, urgent problems. Everything found its way to me. And somehow, I was always the one expected to fix it without making it uncomfortable for anyone else. The authority in our family wasn't formal. It wasn't written down. It came from whoever spoke the loudest without being questioned. That was my sister. My parents followed. Her tone more than my reasoning. If I disagreed, I became difficult. If I refused, I became selfish. I learned early that fairness was not a shared value in my home. Stability was. And stability always meant I adjusted. There were small moments I ignored. At first, a missing bank letter that never arrived, a phone call I wasn't told about, a decision made about my property that I only found out after it was already done. Each time someone would explain it as confusion, timing, or misunderstanding, and each time I told myself it wasn't worth creating tension. But the truth is, no one corrects a system that works in their favor. I was the sisty, I just didn't know it yet. The shift didn't feel dramatic. It never does. It felt like being slowly excluded from decisions about my own life while still being expected to fund them. I was present enough to be responsible, but absent enough not to be consulted. Over time, I stopped asking. That was the real beginning. I didn't see it as control at first. Everything felt normal because it had always been like that. I thought this was just what families did when they trusted each other. But trust was never what I was given. I was given responsibility without choice, and silence was always expected. In return, I didn't question it because questioning meant conflict, and conflict always meant I would be the problem. So I learned to stay useful instead of honest. Useful meant I was needed. Needed meant I belonged, and belonging was the only thing. I thought I couldn't afford to lose, but I didn't realize belonging without respect was just another form of disappearance. I only understood that later when I stopped paying for peace anymore now. The first time I realized something was seriously wrong, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, almost boring. The kind of wrong you only notice when you start paying attention to details that never used to matter. It began with my mail. A single missing envelope turned into 2, then 3, then nothing at all from my bank or mortgage company. At first, I blamed delays, holidays, anything that made it feel normal, but the longer it went on, the more it felt intentional. So I called the post office. That's when everything shifted. The woman, on the phone, checked my address, then paused in a way that didn't feel routine. She told me there was a forwarding request on file, and it was sending everything to my parents' house. I remember sitting in my car for a long time after that call, just staring at nothing. Because there are some truths that don't land immediately. They sit in your chest. First, then your mind catches up. When I finally got home, I checked my credit report. Not because I expected anything, but because I needed. To be sure, that's when I saw it. A new mortgage opened in my name against my house. $285,000. I remember reading it 3 times before I could breathe properly. Every document had my details, my signature, my life, rewritten like it belonged to someone else using my identity. But the signature wasn't mine. It was close enough to fool anyone who didn't know me well. And that was the moment I understood. This wasn't a mistake. It was planned. The first name I saw on the documents was my mother's friend, the notary, who used to sit in our kitchen drinking tea. Then I saw the account transfers. Money leaving my house and arriving in places I had never authorized. My sister's business account, my father's. Name my mother's account too. It didn't feel like shock, it felt like recognition. Like my entire life had already been decided without me in it, and I was just catching up to the truth everyone else had agreed on first. That was when I stopped, calling it confusion, and started calling it what it was. A decision made without me. I didn't confront anyone that day. I just sat there looking at my screen, realizing I had been living inside a story where I was never the main person. I was the backup plan. The safety net no one thanked until it broke. And for the first time, I understood that I wasn't part of the family system. I was the structure holding it up. And structures are only noticed when they start to fail. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was realizing how long it had been happening without me noticing. Every explanation they gave me now sounded like preparation instead of coincidence. Every delay, every missing letter, every conversation that ended too quickly, it wasn't random. It was coordinated, and I had been too trusting to see the shape of it forming around me. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay awake, replaying every moment I had ignored. Not because I missed the signs, but because I had been trained, not to question them. And that was the first time I stopped thinking of them as mistakes. I started thinking of them as choices that always seemed to leave me out of the room where they were made. And for the first time, I didn't try to enter that room anymore. Instead, the day I confirmed everything, I didn't call anyone first. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. I went straight to a lawyer because something in me had already stopped believing this could be solved inside the family. Sitting in that office, I listened as he went through the documents one by one, but I wasn't really hearing legal terms. I was hearing confirmation that my life had been handled like a resource instead of a person. He pointed out the forged signature, the notary record, the timing of the mortgage, the bank transfers. Every detail added another layer to something I already felt in my body before I could explain it logically. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was structure, a system built around my absence from decisions that affected me the most. When he asked me if I had ever authorized any of it, I didn't even hesitate. No. Because I knew the truth wasn't something I had to remember. It was something I had been excluded from. That was the moment I stopped hoping there was a misunderstanding and started accepting there was intent. The boundary didn't break all at once, it broke in a single sentence. I still remember clearly, "You owe this family." It came from my sister when I finally questioned the mortgage, not denial, not surprise, just entitlement. Like my existence had always included repayment in ways I never agreed to. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else because it explained everything, not just the loan, not just the money, but every moment I had been positioned as the one who would absorb consequences quietly so others could continue living loudly. For the first time, I didn't argue back. I didn't try to convince her I was right. I didn't explain what was legal or fair. Something inside me had already moved past needing them to understand. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every transfer, every record, every signature. Not for them, for something larger than emotion. For proof that reality existed outside of their version of it, and as I did it, I noticed something strange. The more evidence I collected, the less I felt like part of the situation. It was like stepping out of a house I had lived in my whole life and finally seeing it from the outside, still familiar. Still connected, but no longer safe to enter. That was also when I stopped responding to emotional calls, the guilt messages, the reminders of family, the pressure disguised as concern. I didn't argue with them. I just let them exist without feeding them anymore, because I finally understood something I had avoided for years. Every time I had said yes in the past wasn't out of agreement. It was out of fear of becoming the person who disrupts peace, but peace that depends on silence is not peace. It's control, and once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. I didn't feel angry yet. That came later. What I felt first was clarity. Cold, steady clarity. The kind that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that doesn't need validation, just direction.